When is tossing it all and moving on a different direction the right thing to do? And when is it the wrong thing to do? We're all tempted to do that once in a while. And sometimes that's a good idea. And sometimes it's a terrible idea. And just because you want to doesn't mean you should. Please join Kristi and I, and we talk about when is evolution the right thing to do and when is it simply a distraction or maybe setting you back. Join us on the next episode of the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. I'm Kristi Candle. I'm your co-host. I'm a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to become developers in their community. And I'm joined today with my co-host, Erik Stenbakken.
Yes, I'm here. My real estate journey started in about 2010 with long-term rentals. I transitioned into short-term rentals and now into what? I don't know. That's kind of the topic of our podcast today. Not about me, but about the real estate investor journey. It is so normal that you evolve because the cheese moves, right? I read the 1 Minute Manager recently. I didn't know that they had the same authors had written the Who Moved My Cheese, which if you have not read that, it will take you all of maybe an hour to read and figure out what's going on with that. But the point is, everything changes, right? It just changes. There's just the truth that if you're not changing, the market's changing. And so something changed, right? So it's always something. So today's show, we're going to talk about when is change the right thing to do? Because there's a line between evolution as an investor and distraction as an investor, shiny object syndrome. So we're going to talk about that. Kristi, what do you have to reflect on that? Have you ever changed as a real estate investor? Are you still doing the same thing you started with?
I definitely changed. And I think, with that shiny object syndrome, I've definitely been pulled myself to go, hey, maybe should I switch and go into flipping? Should I switch from what I'm doing and go somewhere else? And what it really keeps me to my core is when my why is solid and I go, this was my plan. I've got these going on in this bucket. This was my plan and strategy. And I know if I were to pause and say, if I switched gears and started doing this, then I would understand I was stretching myself too thin and it wasn't the right move right then. And then that was what allowed me, for the most part, to not get too distracted to go down new ventures before I was ready.
Right. Because a lot of us who are entrepreneurs and who have been in it for more than a minute, because let's face it, there are a lot of people who try the entrepreneur thing and it doesn't work for them. And this is not me criticizing, but it's just saying for some people, it didn't work, right?
Well, I think only 5% of us are entrepreneurs in the first place. So
however they categorize that, it's a pretty low number. And true, whether we like it or not, entrepreneurs are a little bit squirrel because that's what allowed us to succeed, is that we have to have that ability to just kind of pounce on the next thing that's moving and go with it. And sometimes we have to dodge a truck as the squirrels that we are, sometimes more successfully than others. But this is part of who we are, right? And as real estate investors, I wish that I could just see a show of hands of all of our listeners who has considered flipping. Really thought you know what? I think maybe I'll start a flipping business. Oh, who hasn't done that? I have definitely done that. I thought, maybe this is just what we do, right? And who hasn't thought of multifamily, at least small multifamily? It's I could do that. Or STRs. It's just.
Or land flipping or whatever the next hot thing is out there, because you think, okay, well, everyone's doing it. There must be an easy way to make money. And I think we really think there's an easy button out there that if I switch to this asset class or this category, then that's going to be easier. And that's not the case. Hey, can we talk business for a second? If you've been flipping houses or running short-term rentals, you already know how to hustle. You know how to spot opportunity, add value, and make a property work harder. But if we're being honest, flipping gets exhausting, and short-term rentals are definitely not passive. So what's next? For a lot of people I work with, the answer is real estate development. I'm talking about turning a vacant lot into a quadplex, or bringing a rundown building back to life as a mixed-use space. I'm Kristi Candle, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. And now I host the Local Real Estate Developer podcast to help locals like you do the same. We pull back the curtain and show you what it takes to go from flipper or host to local developer. If you're ready to build something bigger, this podcast is for you. Check out the Local Real Estate Developer podcast on all platforms.
So let's let's dive into this a little bit. And hopefully, as you're listening, you can use these to ask yourself, okay, so I'm thinking about the next thing. Is that the thing you should be thinking about? Is that the thing you should be doing? Or should you be actually focusing on what you're doing right now? That's assuming you're doing something. If you're not doing something, maybe you should. And you can use some of these tools to help you figure out, well, is it time for me to make a move or not? Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just ADD. Sometimes it's boredom. I've heard, and I'm sure you have too, of the story of high producing, high performing individuals who basically sabotage things when they're going well because they want chaos. Because some people believe that they thrive in chaos. And when things are going too smoothly, they'll just create that for themselves.
And sometimes the self-sabotage happens unconsciously. To where if things are going too much, they won't even realize that that's what they're doing. So that whole level of taking the time to pause and having some self-awareness goes a long way as an entrepreneur.
Right. I think as we start into this, figuring out is change or pivot, evolution, or self-destruction. Let's look at a couple factors that we can think about. One is, are we doing this because we have just a nebulous, like, I don't know why I'm doing this, or do we have a better goal, right? It can be a better why, and the vehicle that we need to get there changes. Like maybe we say, you know what, I want more time on the road. I do not want to have to pay attention to my phone 24/7. Okay, well then STRs is probably not your jam right now, right? Okay, so if your goals have changed, if your why has changed, that's a legitimate thing too. Or maybe you need a better ROI. You know, you've got $20,000. It's like, I got to make this work for me. And I will do all the work, all the things. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to go for the thing that makes me the most money. But I have all the time and energy to do this. So I'm going to make it work. That could be a very valid reason, very valid thing.
I've seen people where they're teachers in their career and they, make 40 to 60 grand a year. And they realize that they're burnt out. And while they loved that initially, it's not fulfilling the same spot that it did previously. And so they were willing to take that risk and jump into real estate for that reason. And for them, in that case, flipping was the answer because it was a way to create that cash flow. And then later, as their game evolved, it became into, okay, well now, how do we change this? How do we grow wealth? How do we build more equity? But yeah, so it just depends on where you're at in life as well.
Right. And so you use this word evolved. And there seems to be kind of almost an unspoken should I say, path that real estate investors are supposed to do, or that they do. And it's evolution and it's inevitable. You start with single family homes, and then you scale up by using the Burr method. You refinance your money back out of that. And then you get more and more and more of these. Then you sell those, and you either get into high-end STRs or you get into multifamily, and then you get into bigger multifamily, and then you get into syndications. And this is just what you do. That's evolution. I remember on a podcast years ago, some hosts interviewed a man. Unfortunately, he died of COVID during COVID in the South. I want to say it was maybe Mississippi. And he had a portfolio of about, I say, roughly 150 single family homes, all in one town.
Wow.
And that's all he did. And the majority of them were paid off. And the hosts were like, what? Like, you've been in this a long time and you're still doing single family homes? Like, that's crazy. Like, could you imagine 100 paid off single family homes? The kind of cash flow that would give you? That
would be phenomenal.
That would be something significant, right? But there's this assumption that like, oh, we're just going to keep moving into the next thing, because we'll say, well, maybe it's not working for me, or it's too slow for me, which may or may not be true. But culturally within real estate investing community, there's an assumption, unspoken, maybe unsaid overtly, that you definitely need to change your asset class, right? You just have to do that. And I think that is not true. You don't have to do that. There's the go big, take massive action. And I think a really important question to ask yourself, as Kristi and I are both asking ourselves, because this is for us. A lot of this is for us, is why? Why am I doing the thing that I'm doing? And it's really important that you ask this of yourself. I made a move. It was a disastrous one, selling out of one and 1031ing into the other one, because my why was kind of just a general vague unease and discomfort and dislike with what was happening with an HOA. Was it disaster? No. Was it an inevitable crash and burn? Also, no. Was it a terrible investment where I was? No, it wasn't. It was an annoyance. And so kind of what I did is I burned the house down to kill a spider. That kind of a thing. And we do that as investors sometimes because we have this short vision of things and we're like, well, I can rebuild it. I can do this thing. This is what I do. I'm going to move on. And that can be a problem. What other things can you think of, Kristi, that are relevant as we consider, well, wait a minute, am I doing this for the right reasons? Or maybe not?
I think it's key to look at something and go, am I stopping because it's hard and I don't want to deal with this hard? Like maybe this hard hits differently. Or am I stopping because I'm truly feeling the friction, the energy, the momentum? It's not there anymore. And I don't feel in alignment. Because sometimes, we're going to get to a problem where it's hard and you have to figure out this challenge to go, how can I make this better? And you do need to roll your sleeves up and go deep. But then I think it's also being able to look at a situation and that's where you've got to have your own criteria and your support team around you. But to go, man, I keep throwing this stuff against the wall and nothing is sticking. Nothing is working. Like I feel like I'm pushing a boulder uphill and eventually it's time to go, you know what? It is time to move on. Erik, when you would hit something like that, how do you have a criteria or how would you, or support team, how would you go through that type of decision making?
I think that's a really super good question. And I think sometimes the timing makes all the difference. And I don't hear this spoken of enough on other podcasts. And if you're 27 years old and what you're doing just isn't working and you got to make rent, you've got 2 months rent in the bank and that's it, then guess what? Yeah, you need to switch gears. You need to find the next thing that is going to pay the bills and you have got to move. You just have to. Now, if you're 55 and you've got 18 months worth of savings and backstop going on here, and you're thinking about trying something else and you've tried it for 3 weeks and it hasn't stuck yet, you know what? You have more runway. And so I think that those things depend on where you are in your journey. And it depends on what your goals are. We talked about the why. If your goals are, look, I want to do this as a legacy thing, then, probably if you're playing the long game, it's a more boring game. It just is.
And there's going to be parts of the boring. I was talking to someone last night or the night before about it, but there's going to be times where it's just the slow, boring grind and you don't see the results. And to anyone looking from the outside, they're just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Are you sure this is the right direction? And it's sometimes you're just in that mode. And what I've started to reframe, and this is only just recently in the past, I would say 6 months to a year, but enjoying this slow slog of, I know we've got to put these reps in and I know that we're getting momentum and things are trending, but we're not seeing the fruits yet. But I know it's the right steps because of all the businesses that we've started and run and the people that we work with. But this is where, the overnight success was 10 years in the making that no one cared about because it was so boring to watch and they didn't believe it.
So along that point, if you're a reader and you're listening to this, I really highly recommend the book Mastery by George Leonard. He's like a 10th degree black belt in martial arts. And he talks about this boring middle, right? And this is essential. And this is a difficult thing to sort out. See, are we thinking about this and doing, being strategic about this, or are we just putting off taking action? That's another really important thing to ask yourself is, am I really putting the energy into this thing? Have you thought about doing the thing or have you done the thing? There is a universe of difference between the two. If you've done the thing, you've done it over and over, and it just hasn't worked, okay, you did the thing. You tried, it didn't work. I think that that's a good indicator. If your passion isn't for that, then it's okay to make a move. Okay, so years ago, I somehow got connected with a top, I did commercial photography and advertising photography back in the day. And I got to talk to a photo agent. She was an agent for Magnum. If you want to look that up, a Magnum photo agency, kind of the NBA all-stars of photographers, okay, when it came to editorial work and commercial work. And so somehow I got on her radar, ended up talking to her, which would have cost me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars an hour had I had to pay for this. But for whatever reason, she liked talking to me. And she's one time said, I talked to somebody, some of these young photographers out here, and they said, I want to be a photographer. And I said, wait a minute. If you want to be a photographer, quit now. If you have to be a photographer, you have a chance.
Yep.
And that stuck in my mind. I thought, wow, that sounds so harsh. But let me tell you what, being a photographer and paying bills and being in the black for something that everyone else in the world does for free as a hobby is incredibly difficult. Okay. It's just not easy. It's like, I'd like to be a golf pro. Sure. So would everyone else. And they spend their spare time and their money doing what they do. So that thing, do you want to be or do you have to be, I just never forgot that.
You will respond so differently depending on if you just want something versus, no, I'm going to make it work no matter what. That's so true, which really leads into when we start off with that mindset and we just charge forward, you can get to a point where sometimes you get so invested and so pregnant in a deal or so deep in that your dead deal costs, are so much that you won't let yourself get out of a situation that might not work for you anymore.
Sunk cost bias. Yep. I've already put all this time into it. I paid for this course. I put my money into this, whatever it is. And
I've got this partnership. We've been doing these deals for 5 or 7 years. We've got property management. We're flipping houses. None of us are happy, but we're in so far.
Yeah. I don't want to let my team down. I told my real estate agent I was going to buy something in this market. And I don't know. They spent time on it, which, hey, look, I get that. I'm a licensed agent and I don't I don't enjoy somebody saying, I'm going to do the thing. You spend time on it, energy on it, and it doesn't happen. Yeah. But boy, don't we all do that with all kinds of things? Probably the most common thing I see is relationships. I see people like, well, I spent all this time. I spent months, years, whatever. And it's like, and to everyone else on the outside, they're looking at this. I bet you everyone here listening can think of someone like this that you're like, it's a disaster. Just go. Just
cut the cord. Be done. None of you are happy. You will be so much happier on the other side.
Yes. Take the loss and move on. And as real estate investors, we do the same thing. I mean, I personally did that. We invested in a lot, not to make money, but we were going to build our forever home on it. And we decided we were not going to, but the market has slipped. And so we were going to sell the thing. And the price we were getting was tens of thousands of dollars less than what we paid for it. And together, my wife and I said, no, we can't do it. We can't do it. We can't take that loss. So we sat on it for another year. And guess what? We ended up getting the exact same amount of money that we could have gotten a year earlier. And let me tell you what, a year earlier, that money would have bought more investment properties than it did a year later. We gained absolutely nothing by keeping that lot. We paid the HOA bills, we paid the taxes, I mowed the thing. It was 2 acres. I had to buy and operate a trailer with a riding mower and go out there literally. So that's what it cost us to keep this thing. And so we do this as investors all the time too. We stay in something that's it's time to go. And I've been in deals and partnerships and relationships, and sometimes friends from the outside, and you need honest friends. I finally said, yeah, that's okay, we're done here. They've said, what took you so long? And so sometimes having an outside perspective is useful because there's an expression that actually took me a while to figure out. It's the fish are the last to discover water.
Yep.
Because they're so in it all the time. Literally fish, right? It's just they don't even know what water is because that's just what is everywhere all the time. And we are like that as human beings. And so having somebody who's outside the jar, so to speak, outside the fishbowl to help us see, I think is important. I am co-host of this podcast because education is my calling. That's also why I developed a course on short-term rentals. It's called STR in an Hour, and it's perfect for busy professionals. It's a lot of content packed into 1 hour. No fluff, no upsell. It's an overview of STRs from A to Z. Everything from how to choose a property to how to estimate income and expenses. It's literally the best and most content I could pack into 59 minutes. With over 4,000 nightly stays in my own STRs, I've learned important lessons, and I want to share them with you. Link with more information in the show notes.
To let those people know, to our trusted advisors and the people around us, that when they do see something, they're like, what took you so long? To then give them the permission to say, hey, next time you see something not aligned, please tell me earlier, catch me earlier. And I've really started to practice that, because I think the more that we can be honest with ourselves and go, I know I'm going to have a bias and I'm going to see things differently. So if I can empower the people around me to feel safe and that I trust them enough to tell me something that hurts, that's only going to make all of us better. It's going to make us have a deeper relationship. It's going to get me out of situations faster, and we're going to grow and evolve in a positive way.
Right. So that's a good segue. What are some signs, some elements that are cues to say, oh, yes, I probably, this is change and a pivot in the right direction. It's not avoidance. It's not just bailing when things get hard, because, the whole Seth Godin, the dip thing, right? It's like, well, yeah, there's going to be a slow time and hard, and success is on the other side of that. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's like, it just isn't working. But what are some signs, Kristi, that this is a good idea? It's like, you know what? Yeah, this probably is time to change.
Yeah, for me, it's feeling alignment, because I remember when I tried right before 2020, I decided I was going to start a new company, and it had nothing to do with real estate, had nothing to do with development. It had to do with, I thought I was creating an app to connect people who were being tourists with the local businesses so they could have the best local experience. Turns out that's a whole other e-commerce business that I knew nothing about, and COVID hit the next year and it was terrible. Nothing in that business felt aligned. Nothing felt smooth. It felt like learning a whole new language and everything. So that just fell off from the beginning, but I had extra money and time. So I was like, we'll try it. Not a winner. I should have pulled the plug sooner. Whereas there's other ventures that once you get started, like even when I started Local Real Estate Developers, it just made so much sense. Yes, it was another company, but it was taking my 20 years of experience and working with hundreds of communities and living in and working in lots of small towns and going, wait, I've been on the public side, I've been on the private side, I've been a developer. This makes sense to then be able to empower our locals to go be developers. And it did involve new things. It meant I needed to do things like get on podcasts and not hate the sound of my voice or how I look. And it meant doing, building courses or creating mentorship programs that were all slightly new, but all very much aligned in the bigger vision and mission for what was happening.
Yeah. So what you were doing was finding a new application for skills that you already had. So in one sense, it was new. It was all new. But in the other sense, not really. You've changed the color of the vehicle, not really the vehicle. And so I think that's one of the things to think about when you're thinking about making a change, is that, are you in fact starting over everything completely? If I was going to go out and start a trout farm, I have to learn everything. Right? Okay, I've caught some fish in my life, but that's it. It doesn't prepare me to run. I mean, I would have to learn everything about aquaculture, just absolutely everything. And I would be starting over completely. If I got into developing quadplexes for rentals and I had to do the development of that, it's like, well, yes and no. It's new. That would be new to me, but I have built purpose-built rentals before. Let's see, I've been a landlord for going on, decade and a half longer. And it's like, okay, so I've done that. And so I guess actually this is just a different synthesis of those experiences that I have. Right. So what we're talking about here is reducing risk.
Yes.
You have to be looking at your why. What is my why on the other side of this? And we can have all kinds of bad whys. We can be like, well, I don't want to let those people down because I told them once that that's what I was going to do. You know what? They're not watching. They're not keeping score.
They're not. They're not. It seems like so many people are watching and they care. They're not.
And even if they are not living your life. You are living your life. And you fast forward 3 years, chances are they will not be even aware of your existence. And you have to do it for you and for the reasons that you have. Right. So that's a very important thing. Some other signs of a healthy pivot is that you're solving something that you care about. Back in photography days, I had a criteria that I heard from someone else, is that in order to take a job, you had to like 2 of 3 things. You had to like the people you were working with, or you had to like the cause that it represented, or you had to like the money. right? Seldom is one of those enough. Yeah, sometimes maybe, but seldom. You really want two of those three things. And so if you're tackling a problem you care about, suppose you're getting into affordable housing, you say, you know what, I really want to get into this. Okay, so you are, by what you're doing, helping to solve a problem that you care about. Kristi is starting up her Elevate and local sports complex type of thing. This is answering a need of the community to have a place to go and to belong and to a new kind of fitness center, all kinds of things going on. And it's in her, it's a passion in her to solve this problem.
Now we just found out we're solving another problem because we have made tons of traction with Parks and Rec departments in the areas that we're working in, and they have a $102 billion shortage of funding in Parks and Rec. And if we think about our parkland in general, it was meant to always be that third space that we went to hang out at and to meet our community members, and that it didn't matter what your title or status was in the community. When you were playing soccer, you were playing soccer. When your kids are on the swings, they're on the swings. And now there's a problem that we get to partner with our local municipalities on and take that existing land and bring new life and new energy and new funding to where we can increase the amount of free space that we have while having additional paid amenities to where we truly are going to reimagine how we gather and create that stronger community bond. So clearly my voice just changed. I am so inspired and fired up from this to where we're solving problems. We're bringing our community together. We're keeping people active. We're keeping people well because our whole healthcare system is messed up. And so we're helping get all of that going and building the emotional and the deeper bonds and relationships and connection to where I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Yes, let's keep solving these types of problems. This is fun. This is inspiring. And it takes my 20 years of experience and says, hey, cool, you can do this because of your experience.
And sometimes we fall into these things, but where Kristi is with this is not really falling into it, right? There's a lot of intentionality about this. And that's, I guess, another point too, is that if you sit down and think about, okay, why am I doing this? What's my why on the other side? And I think 10, 10, 10, there's other variations of this, is how will I feel about this in 10 days? How will I feel about this in 10 months? How will I feel about this in 10 years? And you could put a legacy on the end of that. What does this do for legacy or for the people around me? That's really important because most of the time we tend to think about how is this going to feel in 10 minutes? Like that's what I care about. And wow, that is just not the best criteria to be making your decisions on. And so just being intentional about why you're doing it, what it means to you, how can you keep the skills that you've got and apply them in a new way? Another question to ask yourself, if no one knew about it, because they kind of really don't, even if you told them that you do, would you keep doing it? Is the passion in you? If there was no social media, you couldn't post about it. Would you do it? And I wonder that about half the food on the internet, maybe 3/4 of it. If there was no one to show that you did this, would you do it? And I think probably half of that stuff would just never happen. No one's going to make macaroni and cheese in the sink because that's just dumb. But it gets a lot of traction on social media because people look at it. So I think I want to highlight one thing too, is it's important to ask yourself, am I avoiding this or pausing at this just because it's new and I don't really know all about it, or because I don't want to do the work? And related to that is maybe it's wrong for me, right? And this is a big deal because it's possible to look at a situation and say, no, I'm not going to move forward with that. And that decision might be the right decision because it just doesn't work for your why, it doesn't use your experiences, you're doing it for the wrong motivation, or you might not be doing it because it feels uncomfortable, because it feels like it's going to be work, because you can't be certain that it's going to work, to succeed. And those are not great reasons to do it. So, Kristi, what do you have here as we're kind of the home stretch?
I was just going to say, clearly we've bounced around and there's not, hey, A plus B equals C. There is no clear path. There is no, hey, ask this question. But I think that having a good group of people around you that you trust, being willing to ask yourself the hard questions, and honestly, in today's world where we're constantly having our phones and having distractions, if you just take that time to go sit outside, to go on a walk, don't have distractions, and give yourself the time to really think about where you're at and what you're doing, that can go a long way. And that if you listen to yourself and you trust your intuition and your gut, it's going to lead you in the right direction.
All right, so let's do some really quick round here, and tell me why you decided to do some of these things. You're transitioning from short-term rentals to boutique hotels. Why?
Reducing the number of different properties, putting it all under one roof for maintenance, and taking everything that we've learned and now being able to scale that. So it's actually going to simplify things by going bigger.
Interesting. Okay, so local real estate developer, and you threw a podcast into that. So you developed that. What was the why behind why you would do that?
Early, I knew that we didn't have people getting into development. I didn't know why. And the more people I talked to, the more that I understood. It comes down to a core of, first you have to build the awareness and the belief in people that they can actually be a developer. So I can't get people to take action until they even believe that it's possible. So by starting a podcast, we're now sharing the stories of people just like them. I'm not having massive developers on. I'm having people just like you and me on to talk about the projects that they're doing. So that way someone can hear, I could do that too. So it's just starting a step earlier once we got more feedback to go, all right, this is what it'll actually take to get locals to become developers.
Okay. So you made a move from Ohio, the little town, white bread, Ohio, to Florida, which is like, wow, right on the beach in Florida and so on. What was that?
It was always for me. Growing up, I just watched the cycle of how you would grow up, go to college, get married, have kids, work a job for 40 years, however long that is, I don't even know anymore, retire, and then start living. And I couldn't. There's a saying that I actually have written down that died at 25, just not buried yet. And that's a hard statement if you think about it, but how many people do you know kind of stopped living, gave up on their dreams? So for me, it was always, I wanted the quality of life. I knew that there was such a much bigger world out there, and I just wanted to experience and see. So for me, I chose quality of life as number one. I was like, I'll get a job, even if I'm waiting tables, I'll figure it out. But I wanted to choose where I lived first and then get to a point where I could be location independent and continue living throughout my life during my best days, during my best years, and not just wait till the end.
Awesome. Any other of those changes you want to questions for me?
What made you get out of photography and say, we're getting into real estate?
Okay, there were two phases to that. And the early phase was from playing the game Cash Flow. And I realized when I played that game, that's a Kiyosaki, by the way, the game preceded Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I played that game and I said, wait a minute, if this is how the economy works, then I'm doing it wrong, because both my work in photography and my wife's work in medicine are 100%. If you turn the hamster wheel, you get the little biscuit that comes out the chute. That's it. You get out of the hamster wheel, there's no more biscuits. That's just how it works. And I realized, oh, shoot, we're doing this wrong. We need to build something more long range.
Mm-hmm.
And 50, 30 years ago, it used to be stock photography. You could take photographs, put them with a stock library, and you could make a good living if you had good pictures in the stock library. Well, the internet just killed that. You can call that whatever you want to, development, advancement, progress, whatever. It killed that. And I realized, wow, can't do that anymore. And so it's like, okay, we have to do something else. And we looked at real estate, despite the fact that in our family history, it had not gone well for some other people. But we decided, you know what, we can do this because it has gone well for a lot of other people. And then what happened at the beginning of COVID was the third time my career basically hit a wall. The first time we had moved from Nebraska to Colorado, and I had to rebuild my client base. And I was like, oh man, it's starting over. It was starting over. I had a portfolio already, but I had to meet all new clients. It takes a long time, right? I was like, man, that is a bummer. Then in 2008, my work was largely with universities and colleges, a lot of commercial advertising work, traveled all over the country doing their marketing materials. And when the recession hit, well, guess what? Colleges and universities are funded by taxes. And when the tax money quit, their budgets quit. And then I got phone calls like, yeah, we can't have you come this year. We're really sorry, like your work, but that's that. I was like, wow, that's a bummer. And that's the same time we started buying and rehabbing long-term rentals. It's because I had more time than I had money. And I had some skills from having DIY a lot of stuff around our own homes. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take some of those skills. And so it wasn't inventing everything. I wasn't taking up fish farming. Like I knew how to replace a sink. I knew how to put in a faucet. I could do those things. And I did those and added a lot of value. And that's what we did. And then the third time, and this was the last basic time I said, okay, this one's it, is when COVID hit. Because photography, funny thing is it actually uses real people and real people in the proximity of each other. And video productions are lots of people in proximity with each other. And that got very difficult to do during COVID. And I said, this is ridiculous. And I sat down and said, okay, I have to do something that's a little bit independent of the whims of marketing and advertising. And that is when I decided, and that was like a necessity, right? But I had already done some of it. It wasn't like I went from photography and like, that's it, I'm selling all my gear, which I haven't sold a lot of it, but not all of it. There's still some legacy clients I serve, but I didn't ditch everything and jump into real estate and like, I'm just going to buy stuff and I'm going to scale. I started slowly, one at a time. We got one, we got it stabilized. Then we got another one. Then we got it stabilized. Then we got another one. Then we got it stabilized. And the income from those started rolling in. And it's like, oh, well, let's just use that income to buy the next one. And we started that kind of business. And so when I decided in 80-20, what happened is I sat down at a table and on a piece of paper, I said, okay, where's my income and income been and my time been over the last, let's just say 10 years. I said photography in one column. Here's how much money I made on that in 10 years, roughly. And how much time did I put in on that? Okay. So then I went in the next column under real estate. All right. How much money did I probably make on real estate, active cash flow and appreciation? I put that number down there. And how much time did I put in on that? I looked at the bottom like, okay, so I have an 80-20 here. I have 80% of the wealth that I got from real estate that I put in 20% of the time. I put in 80% of my time on photography, which produced 20% of my income. What if I put 80% of my time into real estate? What would that do? And that was it. That was the moment. I like, that's it. I'm switching gears. Here we go. And I'm in for real. And that's what I did. And it's been scary. It's been hard. There's been bad days. If you doubt that, listen to some past episodes. But I still think that was the right thing to do. And I'm in the process of figuring out what's the next for me, but it's not buying a different camera set to try that.
Well, and I think that's a good point. I think, the more that we keep growing, we keep evolving, we keep, you took the time to pause and reflect, and it all leads us to our next step and the next things in life. Yeah, just everyone keep listening to yourselves. You'll know when you need to keep staying and holding on to something. You'll know when it's time to let it go, and just trust that the universe knows what's best. You want to take us out of here?
I will. I was thinking of our Kenny Rogers song, Got to Know When to. We're not going to sing again. We did that. But there is a time to move. And we hope that this has helped give a little bit of clarity to you as you think about that. And this is one of the more introspective parts of real estate investing. And again, that's why this podcast exists, because we want to talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. And this is the truth, is that there are times you look back and you think, wow, or you look forward and you think, wow, should I change? Is this the time to do that? And we hope that this has been beneficial to you. Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. If you found value in this, please leave us a review, forward it to a friend, send us a note. Thanks for being here.
Why don't we just keep recording and you can do the intro and I can cut it to the front?
Okay.
Nope, just kidding.